You said this part of the case was clear-cut forensic evidence.
I saw their faces. I saw them do it. I mean,
You blacked out, Clyde.
The jury's gonna believe me, though.
It's not what you know, Clyde. It's what you can prove in court.
Hello all, and welcome back to Mind Juice. Do they have the right guy? Let me be clear. I'm not insinuating a mystery accomplice, or that they have the wrong suspect in custody here. Just wanting to acknowledge a few defense angles and potential strategy likely to present itself. Now in this episode, I will be discussing this car photo, as you see here, which is the initial shot of the white Hyundai Elantra caught speeding away from the King Road residence neighborhood area, found by the gas station clerk days later. Also, licensure by state, what this means, Kohberger's biggest burden to overcome, as well as other potential avenues and tactics we might see with his defense going forward. Also, it continues to bother me, and I ponder in my mind that the stabbing injuries were all different. Sharp force injuries to Ethan, stab wounds to Maddie, edged weapon to Xana. I heard one girl on TikTok last night state that the defense could use this potentially. Sure, maybe the sheaf was left behind on purpose. Why? Maybe Brian maybe didn't use that knife. Can an expert claim prove reasonably that the injuries were suffered from an alternative, much larger or different weapon? Or at least raise suspicion? It's interesting. Why are the injuries all different? Now, we know that on January 12th, Brian appeared in court for his preliminary hearing. First off, a little bit about the PreTrial Procedures. Idaho here. It's actually the second district. The article you see here is the fourth, but it's the same. In felony cases, a preliminary hearing is conducted before a magistrate judge, typically within 14 days of charges. It's a constitutional right to a speedy trial. At this hearing, generally speaking, the prosecuting attorney presents what evidence he or she may have to show that there is a probable cause or a reason to believe that a crime has been committed and that the defendant committed the crime. Probable cause affidavit. If the prosecutor convinces the judge with that information, the defendant is bound over. That is to say, the case is referred to the district court for further action. In other states, you may also understand this as an indictment or he's indicted, either of which this signals the initiation of a criminal proceeding. Okay, if a defendant is bound over or indicted to the district court on a felony charge, he or she must then appear for arraignment before a district judge. This is where he enters the plea of guilty or not guilty. If the prosecutor does not make an adequate showing at the preliminary hearing, the magistrate judge may dismiss the case or the charge may be reduced to a less serious offense. At the arraignment, the court will read the formal charges and the defendant must enter a plea. If the defendant pleads not guilty, which I believe will happen in this case, the court will set the case for trial. So, we know that Brian Kohberger waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing. Why?
Holes in the probable cause. He is questioning the phone pings. He says that those pings are not specific GPS coordinates, and he says the defense can have a field day with those pings, calling them out. He is also questioning the description of Kohberger from the surviving
I
roommate.
knew there was going to obviously be issues as far as him receiving potentially a fair trial. People jumping to conclusions about the presumption of innocence and the integrity of the criminal justice system. So the eager to be exonerated was the language he used. When we talked about it, it was more or less he was asserting innocence, but that's the language he used.
All right, so there we hear from Jason Labar, his initial public defender upon being arrested in Pennsylvania. There are holes in the PCA. This is typical for defense counsel, they'll always say this. However, there are indeed holes. He's questioning the phone pings. He says the pings are not specific GPS coordinates, stating that the defense can have a field day. Again, this is typical defense to this sort of evidence. Also questioning the description of Kohberger from the surviving roommate. Not specific enough. I believe the state could have a counter for this, which does not yet have to be released and probably won't. Did they do a photo lineup? If they did give one to DM, I would bet that it's recorded. And her being able to select him would be huge. It will definitely strengthen her credibility. Prayers and strength her way. You got this, girl. Now, in my opinion, hear me out. The biggest and most important task for Kohberger's defense is explaining how and why the DNA was found at the crime scene, on the knife sheath, and further, the white Hyundai Elantra. To me, these are the two biggest pieces. Whether, the knife, whether it be bought, sold, transference of touch DNA, he has to be able to explain this away. So for instance, let's say that Ethan accidentally took a gym bag home that ended up being Kohberger's, and Kohberger states that he remembers that's the last place he put his knife after going camping with his dad, and then they call his dad to testify that he remembers all this, okay, just to create reasonable doubt. This is just an example. He still has to prove or explain this away. What puts him there, how this DNA was present, not having any known connection or relation to the victims, at least that was reciprocal. He may attempt to fabricate some sort of connection justification here. Pay attention. He has to. This is where the beyond a reasonable doubt teeter-totter can begin to shift leverage if plausibly defended. Easier said than done, though. I heard somewhere else. Was the knife sheath left? Was it his calling card? I personally don't think so. But for a second, let's take a step back. But if it was, also consider the TAPTA convos regarding his mental state back in 2009. Was this him laying the groundwork for a defense, even all that time ago? Not likely. But hey, if we were considering things from his perspective, if the actual perp, it was his calling card, this thought makes it interesting. Now again, this is all within context and hypotheses. I don't want anyone thinking that I am stating this is the fact in reality, that this is what he's doing. I'm only considering an alternative. What if? Okay. Then it would be fair to presume, following this notion, that he had a plan, or he thinks he does, to attempt to justify its presence. This aspect of his defense is absolutely crucial as well, and is an absolute must. In my opinion, he has a better chance at winning the lottery. Coincidences are indeed a real thing. However, I'm not as sold when positioned to believe that 4, 5, 6 coincidences took place, and thus Kohberger is not the man, not me. However, if he and his team accomplish explaining away this sheath being there, come up with a plausible reason, and are able to defend away the car, which I'll show later, let's presume he establishes a reasonable doubt with the sheath and DNA. He still has a mighty uphill climb to navigate. Cross-examination galore, abundance of other circumstantial evidence. The evidence that's still out there, other things to keep in mind. It's been reported that the Wi-Fi, Kaylee's dad gives clue that Kohberger was logged in or touched, was close enough to touch the system. Could this be used to justify his connection or presence in some fashion? When was Brian's interrogation? There wasn't one. The PCA was that strong. Also, the unsealed search warrant that's set to come out on March 1st. And Banfield said, I don't see why it's the only document left sealed. I'll cover that as well. The moving crime scene, his white car, DNA in his car. Even if he cleaned it, it'd be very, very hard for him to successfully completely rid the vehicle of DNA. Some sort of evidence, likely blood, given, let's say, that it is him. There has to be some evidence left in that car, no matter how well he cleaned it. The shoe print, the vans. There's a lot of college kids that own vans. I'm not a college kid, well, graduate student. But I have 2 pairs of vans. So yes, indeed, they are very common amongst that population. That won't be hard to seal away. No weapon, not necessarily a must. They don't have a committed weapon in Delphi either. They have an unspent shell casing. Reasonable grounds for entrapment and kidnapping, not murder, in my opinion. Mr. Kohberger is eager to be exonerated of these charges and looks forward to resolving these matters as promptly as possible, he insisted in a statement released to the press. Mr. Kohberger has been accused of very serious crimes, but the American justice system cloaks him in a veil of innocence. He should be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, not tried in the court of public opinion.
I planned it over and over again in my head? Yeah. Who wouldn't fantasize about that? None of these are an admission of guilt, Nick. You did it. Well, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. Didn't you tell me that once?
But then again, I remember the research questions. I dug a little bit deeper. Read these here. The original quest was, "I'm inviting you to participate," Kohberger wrote, "in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent arrest, with an emphasis on your thoughts and your feelings throughout your experience." These questions here. Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. How did you travel to and enter the location that the crime occurred? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling. Now, these questions were within the context of a graduate-level research study conducted, scripted by Kohberger. Looking back, he now would be able to answer these himself. However, I believe he recognized himself as different, numb, emotionally detached, thus wanted a glimpse into how a mentally healthy individual would respond. Even to his Papa Rogers exchanges, it was clear he was a bit off in interpreting, maintaining a normal conversation without making someone uncomfortable. For defense purposes, it is true that counter-arguments will be presented to each piece of what appears to be Loctite evidence. The DM description, the defender says not very strong, it's just bushy eyebrows. The phone pings just before and after the crimes had taken place, then returned the next day. This is his 8458 phone per records, as well as his white Hyundai Elantra caught on various cams, both at WSU campus as well as around Moscow. Particularly simultaneous prevalence, patterns consistent with one another. DNA in the car, we have yet to find out. Apartment findings, computers, what did they find? DNA on sheath, weapon covering next to victims amidst a knife act. Trash he threw out at his neighbors, although his dad's DNA, it drew a 99.9998% chance of not being excluded from. Remember, this is important. In order to obtain a search warrant after dusk, so dark hours, that is after dark, there is a significantly higher burden necessary to be satisfied by the judge. Why? Because in the dark often precludes a more dangerous approach. Think SWAT, stealth, okay? This is important not to forget. That is, this higher burden was satisfied within the eyes of the judge. That says something. Now, all of this is the hard evidence, I'll say. Then you have these less weighted yet relevant things that can still be sprinkled in. To mention a few, his internet alibis, Papa Rogers, inside looking. His friends were the neighbor states, informing a reporter that Brian actually asked him about the murders a few days after, commenting that he didn't appear to have, or commenting that the law enforcement didn't have anyone on their radar yet. And in response to a comment as to why he frequented Moscow so much, Brian says, because there's better shopping over there. His tap to blogs. Now, where are we at? 6 months before hearing, waiving 14 days, this is a big deal, okay? The prosecution asked for 4 to 5 days scheduled by the state to present evidence against the defendant. With this understanding, it can be understood as to why Bryant waived his right to a speedy trial, giving his defense an opportunity to catch up. That is, so the preliminary hearing does not solely consist of the state's evidence against him, given the amount they have. It would bury him in the public eye for certain, if he's not already. Affect the jury pool potentially, etc. Simply, given the charges he faces, he is in for the long game. The more time he and his defense team can buy to give them a chance to look over all the evidence, begin to develop defense, poke holes in different aspects of the case, etc. Yes, they would have done this regardless had he not waived his right. However, if he had not waived, the judge most likely would have bound the case over at that point, indicted him, because there would have been sufficient evidence to establish probable cause. Hence, the criminal trial proceeding would have been initiated and a court date would have been set. Approximately 90 days, we know that wouldn't have happened. However, as we just saw, Brian played his first chess piece. In high-profile cases, especially those with an abundance of evidence, witnesses, experts, etc., it can be anticipated to be pushed back. Thus, Brian waiving his right to a speedy hearing and trial is not out of the ordinary. Sure, The state's 4 to 5 days of evidence presentation against him, establishing probable cause, will be damaging still come June. However, now his team has more time, thus preparation to give him the best chance. You can already see small defensive tactics being done, such as, upon being arrested, Brian stated, "Was anyone else arrested?" Also, already filing some pretrial discovery-like motions, which typically does not happen until after being indicted. So what this shows us, is that Brian has no intentions of pleading guilty, and is in fact gearing up for trial. The defense motion regarding discovery of a potential accomplice creates the idea of a mystery accomplice. Like I said, I believe this is Kohberger's first chess move.
Law enforcement has answered this question that they think it's just Brian Kohberger. They've got the guy. He's the telling the defense, I was just the driver. There was somebody else. They could be telling the defense, it wasn't me at all. I let my friend borrow my car, borrow my cell phone, borrow my knife, whatever it may be. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day, it just comes out that the state says, no, there was no co-defendants. We have no information, no evidence about any co-defendants, because it is kind of a standard discovery question.
Now, for those not too familiar with the court system, this is a typical defense filing. However, typically not until the discovery phase, preparing for trial, like Tragos just said. Thus, this move is his public defender's first pawn move, if we continue the chess analogy. They are going to file it anyways down the road, but doing it now allows him to begin to plant doubt, make people curious, etc. It makes me wonder if this was Brian's idea or his public defender's. With that said, nothing against public defenders, but statistics show that 88% of defendants facing felonious charges, such as murder in this case, are eventually found guilty. 88%. Why? Because public defenders still have their 40 hours of public service to attend to each week, public defending other assignments, whereas a private hired defense counsel can wipe their slate and do nothing but focus on that case up until the trial date. With that said, I would bet that at some point within the next 6 months, a private defense attorney will step forward, or two, offering to take on this case. Huge potential career trajectory going forward. Think Jose Baez, Channing Mason, in the Casey Anthony case. Now here, with the snapshot from the gas station clerk of the white Hyundai Elantra, I have a photo processing thing that I do. In these pictures here, it's not going to ID Brian Kohberger, but to me what it shows is there's one occupant in that vehicle upon leaving the scene. Now, does that mean that somebody could have been there watching in the neighborhood, like an Enon or, somebody there? Sure, but these picture photo processing here, you can very distinctly see one figure. Now, I don't have one to compare in the same setting, same lighting and all that to show you what it would look like if there was two. But you very distinctly can see one person, and I am arguing that you would be able to see a second figure or person, at least to some extent, if there was in that car. So I believe this shows that he was by himself when he was speeding away in that car. If there was an accomplice at the scene, I'm not getting into that. But in the vehicle, on that picture, it's one person. I have attached numerous phases here so you can see different lighting, different colors. Some you can see it better than others, but it's interesting. Further, I discussed my idea of the suspect's psychopathology because of the crime scene, analyzing the circumstance. What happened? How? Where? What were the variables? Etc. You get what I'm saying. Before Kohberger was ID'd, arrested, I had come to the interpretation that the psychopathy was at play here. Compare this case to another one you've heard of. That's the point. You think of Scream, slasher movies, college sorority co-eds, after a night out on the town, slain in their sleep. That's not supposed to happen, ever. The person responsible for this crime is a monster. So although some believe it wasn't respecting the defendant's rights, innocent until proven guilty, you can't attempt to understand the criminal mind, etc. Why? Why not? The FBI does have a behavioral analysis unit. In fact, take a look at this. Another reason why this Moscow PD kicked ass. Delphi could learn something here. Allowing ego to be set aside, maybe. Look at this Chief Fry here. He specifically saw out the FBI to send him 2 to 3 behavioral analysts, which ended up being 2 males and a female, utilized from day one to hone in and lock down on this suspect. They didn't do that in Delphi. The girl who found the photo of the white Elantra, remember, time of the morning, no front license plate. Okay, the white Hyundai Elantra. The FBI had the year wrong initially. However, they had the make and model right, correct? It's the same vehicle found in the King Road residence neighborhood, eventually tracked down at WSU, further finding the same car leaving Kohberger's residence at 2:44 a.m. and then returning back at 5:27 a.m. As we know, Brian did soon change two plates, which are the Washington ones. However, not soon enough. This known registration switch can be perceived as normal because his plates expired. But in Idaho, state plates requiring front and or rear is by law. There are a few exceptions for older cars. If you have one that's year of make, so like a 1950, there are exceptions. But this car, just by the picture itself, just seeing that it's a 2000, let's say 10 or newer, it does not qualify for the single plate rule. Therefore, if you look at this map I show you here, it can be deduced just from this picture. The FBI, I would imagine, would catch on to this. You know that this car is registered in a blue state simply, okay? If you look at the map here. On the night of the murders, his car still had the Pennsylvania registration, the one rear plate. Just to show you the prevalence of single rear plate cars in Idaho area, take a look at this map. They knew definitively that car in that picture had to have come from a blue state. Why? Because those are the states that legally allow state registered vehicles in this day and age on newer model cars to have one plate. So therefore, that car had to have been registered from one of the blue states, which registers that way. Okay? This white Hyundai Elantra is what started the investigative scent. I would imagine the FBI picked up on the non-front plate. With that said, given Idaho law, a 2010 or newer, like I'd already mentioned, it can be deduced that the white Hyundai Elantra in that photo provided by the gal at the gas station showed law enforcement that this suspect, also present in the King Road residence neighborhood around the time of the murders, was from one of the blue states. Once WSU ran the tags, it was already enticing, merely given it was from a blue state registered car. Further, reviewing the driver's license brought back the bushy eyebrows, consistent with DM's statement. And you at best bet Kohberger's photo was put into a phono item where DM most likely then selected him. Then you have the phone records, which pinged 12 times in that area. He is up against a monumental feat, and quite frankly, I believe he is a bit shocked. He likely knew that the local PD was younger, thus appearing less experienced, unqualified. The true hero here is Chief Fry, setting his ego aside from day one, getting the right people into place, investigation off to a fast-track hot start. If he prioritizes his pride, him and his department's ability first, like Delphi, yes, it ended up being the Indiana State Police and Doug Carter who called in the help of the FBI, not Lesenby. The sheriff office had a 2x4 shoved under the gas pedal, and still does. Political. It's sad.
Vindicated. Do you feel, I guess, any pride?
What I feel is we did our job and we did it right. And we said from the beginning we're going to protect the integrity of the case. We're going to continue to do it right. And we're not a prideful group. What we are is a group that we had a job to do. We did that. And we are happy that we did it the way we did it because of the outcome.
Sure, none of the PCA evidence in and of itself definitively proves Kohberger's guilt. Like I said, the defense is likely to raise argument and or experts to counter each facet of evidence. But given the approach thus far, the PCA, and Brian's persona, history, interest, comments, involvement, his research, he's in a rough spot to say the least. In comparison, look at the Delphi PCA for yourself and tell me which police force investigative unit you would prefer in your community. Different cases, albeit. Let's say, on the case seeking your child's murder suspect, personally, I'll take the Moscow PD, Chief Fry, and his willingness to display humility and be humble over Lesenby and his prideful bunch any day. With that said, I think it's a perfect time to state, Steve Gonsalves, I believe he deserves a great deal of respect for his dedication to his role as a father. He received a lot of flack, but he's a good man. I wish him and his family nothing but strength. I'm stoked he is going to have the opportunity to look the suspect right in the eyes. He should be proud of himself. Now, I think this would be a great time to make a few comments, given that I have intentions of continuing to build on this channel. With that said, if you like my content, please like and subscribe. This content takes a lot of work, and I need the support of you guys as well. Looking back at the collection of videos I have made this far on Einan, Harsh, and Kohberger, I want to make it clear that I am not seeking to sensationalize or dox suspects. Einan put himself in that position given his words, and the PCA, coupled with Chief Fry's conviction, led me to where I am with Kohberger. Yes, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in the general sense. Let's pause that convo and we'll get right back to it. I began discovering my passion for this type of stuff approximately 2 years ago. I was calling in, dropping chat, you name it, regarding the Delphi case. The amount of individuals that got thrown under blame for those crimes is unbelievable. I want to be clear, I am, and this is not that. If you are following me, side note, the Delphi case is what inspired me to begin this journey. For those of you that follow, buckle up. What I am in the works of creating regarding the Delphi case, and finally sharing with the world, is about to blow your mind. No drama, just buckle up. Not a tease, need I not say any more, just something from me to you to look forward to. I'm telling you, mind blown. The 6-year anniversary is approaching. I intend on releasing it then. It is going to take me a long time to prepare and organize, and I've already begun the process and checking in with active counsel first to make sure I'm allowed and clear to release what it is I intend to. Now, you won't see me posting any Richard Allen targeted videos because the PCA in that case is a joke. Not to create any enemies, I mean that sincerely. Look at the strength of the Idaho 4 PCA versus the Delphi one. Different cases and circumstances, no doubt. But you realize that any individual could have been arrested and slanted under that PCA. Law enforcement has provided 6 hours. I'm not implying anything, just stating fact of prevalence. He's a placeholder. You'd think the latter was a token from mock trial. Again, I'm not insinuating anything, yet underscoring my moral and ethical respect for the justice and legal system, and with that said, willingness to voice in contrast when it presents itself as apparent. A little about me, and I promise that this all ties into the content, so you don't think I'm going to continue on ranting. I have a strong passion for investigation, philosophy, psychology, perception, how others see the world through their eyes and experience. Truly. Now, I received my bachelor's in both psychology and philosophy. I then went on to attend law school back in 2014 for 1 year, my 1L. I had a change of heart and then went on to pursue my master's in marriage and family therapy, completing it amongst COVID. Here we are in 2022, and my heart and passion is still in the I don't know what I'm going to do or want to do for the rest of my life phase. But that's okay. So here we are. Now, I never intended on sharing that because it's irrelevant. Within this context wherein I am sharing discussion with all of you, we are all one and the same. Now, why do I bring it up then? Because I want to address those who watch this content and are quick to assume I'm an idiot or parade the innocent until proven guilty, which is true. I agree and respect. But for some defendants, the writing is on the wall, and I trust my intuition, education, experiences to put me in a place where I can make a rational opinion, if possible, given the evidence, independently. Now let me be clear. That can all change once the defense has an opportunity to present their case. However, the prosecution will also be revealing more evidence. I would presume they still have some pretty damning evidence, to say the least. Remember, there was no interrogation and an out-of-state warrant approved for arrest after dusk, which bears a higher burden to obtain. Sure, no one piece proves he did it whatsoever, but if you consider it all together, it paints a damn Picasso. Dead ringer. Now, I don't think he intentionally got caught per se, but his ego is about to have a huge awakening. So for everyone who refuses to look at the PCA and still maintains the fortune cookie, boilerplate ideology of you don't know he did this. No, you're right, I don't. But my response to you is that you must also then consider Jeffrey Epstein absolved of his trafficking charges then. Because he then too shall be deemed innocent until proven guilty. Yes, he had previous charges, but I don't think the real monster was labeled until these came along. So allow Kohberger to enjoy his curtain call, I guess. Because that's what it is. In fact, he's probably more alive now than he has ever been. I am open and willing to listen to his defense, honestly. But never has there been a quadruple homicide, this many coincidences, in the man they have in custody wasn't eventually proven to not have partaken, at least to some extent. So you say the Innocence Project. Find me one person convicted on a PCA this strong. By Hyundai Elantra, phone consistent with patterns. You won't. So those that disagree or think that it is smug of me, then remember, you must also agree that Jeffrey Epstein was innocent. Given that he was not able to face trial, charges drop upon death. I use this case because it's another one that had so much incriminating evidence. The writing was on the wall. Hopefully Kohberger doesn't follow suit and do the same thing he did. Why am I so open and strong with opinion on this issue? Because I am not from the state of Idaho, therefore do not have the duty to try and remain impartial. In fact, even if I did live in Idaho and was called for jury duty, I would be annexed by the defense because I readily admit the inability to approach the case day one with an unbiased mindset. I am biased given my interpretation of the events that day, circumstances, PCA, his behavior before and after, his persona, personality type, area of study, etc. I could write a book on it. I look forward to hearing his case and will truly give him the benefit of the doubt. But no defense games. Or I used to play pickleball with Ethan, and I remember he accidentally took my rec bag home with him. It is the one I took camping with my dad. I'm pretty sure that's where I last put my knife. Followed by fatherly love testimony. Yes. Or maybe he was in that area all those 12 times buying drugs. Yes, there will be a counter argument for everything. Be ready. And all they need is one juror to develop reasonable doubt, which unfortunately I believe is going to come down to trying to establish an accomplice. But for me, it's the science, the tight, astounding investigation completed that have set the stage for my rationale here. Yours is up to you. I only discuss for you to exercise your mind and ultimately consider things for yourself. I am merely your partner in crime, sharing a similar passion within the same genre. That is, I wish you all a grand night, and until next time, take care.